You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it is America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm George Cedarquist, joined this week by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, and Weston Williams. All right, this week, Oliver goes inside the huddle with Joyce El-Khoury, who is currently starring under the baton of Riccardo Muti in Ballo and Maschera with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, just days after being named the Maria Callas Debut Artist of the Year by Dallas Opera. Yeah, we've heard of them, but look, come on. You know the biggest honor of her life will be that interview on the OBS. Plus 2-minute drill. Both the San Antonio Symphony and Simon Estes are throwing in the towel. Bogdan Rosic is not throwing in the towel, and Barry Kosky is kinda throwing in the towel. You'll figure that out in about 40 minutes. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast. Get that full show. Stitcher, Spotify, you're going to click follow. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, and I hope you do, just hit that plus sign. Also, send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes at operaboxscore@gmail.com. Going to get that OBS beer coaster, OBS lapel pin, just for sharing your own hot take. Oliver Camacho, great to see you.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Hi, Oliver.
Did you hear last week's episode, George? Did you listen to it?
Yeah, I listened to every episode. You bet.
Okay. Did you get the voicemail from Tony?
I did. I did. I love Tony.
Did you respond to Tony yet?
I mean, I gestured.
Okay.
What kind of gesture?
Now that we're podcast only.
No, but I'm saying, did you send him his coaster and his lapel pin?
What, he needs to send me an
address.
address.
He only got that for the first time you called in, Oliver. You don't get one
every
single
we
time.
weren't offering swag back then.
No, it's true. It's true.
Now
he
we're
deserves
bribing
it,
them,
and
yeah.
I shall send.
Okay.
Because I'm a man of my word, Oliver.
Yeah, you are.
That's
There
true.
you are.
Yeah.
What's happening here? Matteo Berrettini.
You haven't said hi to Weston or to Dustin or to Matt yet.
Dustin, Weston, how's it going?
I thought when you said Matteo, I thought you were talking to Matt, but you just went Italian for a second.
I also thought he was just doing a bit.
He was just doing a bit.
When we were doing the pre-show setup, we were all showing off our various languages. All right,
Always on the same
let's
page
talk
here.
a little sports. Let's throw it back to Oliver for the sports, and then I'll go.
So the clay court season finishes climactically with Roland Garros, and then we have the shortest amount of time that is known as the grass court season. And Serena Williams has been assigned a wild card in Wimbledon, but who has been making the waves in the grass court season has been the Italian Matteo Berrettini. He already won 2 titles, and so he is poised to go far in Wimbledon, and I'm very happy to hear that. For those of you who remember I think it was the 2019 U.S. Open when Matteo had his sort of coming out, that I will never forget that year when it was so hot at the U.S. Open that if you were wearing white shorts, it was...
You don't have to finish the sentence, Oliver. You really don't have to.
But the reason why I want to be is because I'm annoyed that people who don't know me think I'm thirsty. People...
You're just appreciating what you love.
But I just wanted to put that out there that if you remember Matteo Berrettini and the humid 2019 U.S. Open season.
Remember.
That wasn't the only thing that was humid.
Yeah. that was a very special thing for us in the audience.
Oh my God.
It's funny, Wimbledon. So I'm going to London in a couple days for a few weeks, and I thought, I'm going to be there. I would love to go to Wimbledon, and it turns out it's actually not that hard to get tickets for Wimbledon for next year. You cannot get a ticket for this year. Too late. Stanley Cup, that's my hockey is happening right now. Game 3, Tampa Bay Lightning down 2-0, playing in Tampa Bay tonight on Monday when we're taping. This is make or break for them. I have them winning the Stanley Cup in 6 games for the three-peat. Looking unlikely, but what's looking very likely is inside the huddle.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
The Dallas Opera has named soprano Joyce El-Khoury the 2022 Maria Callas Debut Artist of the Year for her debut at that house as Leila in Bizet's The Pearl Fishers, the award named for the unofficial godmother of the Dallas Opera, is given to a single performer each season in recognition of a particularly memorable and outstanding company debut.
So a little bit of inside baseball before we go inside the huddle. We're recording the body of this podcast, the bones of this podcast on Monday. I'm actually going to interview Joyce El-Khoury tomorrow morning, and then Weston,
all of our secrets.
yeah, Weston's going to do his editing magic to make it sound like one seamless episode.
Seamless. No one will be able to tell.
Yeah, except that neither of you will be on the podcast. But
No, I mean, I'm on the podcast. I'm just being very quiet,
Right.
uncomfortably the entire time.
But what pressure to have an award named after Maria Callas, and then B, to sing Verdi under Riccardo Muti for the first time for a Chicago audience.
Yikes.
And
Oh, this?
yeah, exactly.
This little composer.
Riccardo Muti, a famously easy to please man.
In a role that is just a walk in the park. Amelia in A Masked Ball. So we obviously will be talking about this during this interview. We'll also enjoy a little bit of Joyce El-Khoury's recordings, and she's recorded very healthily, I guess is the word, by Opera Rara, that British
Opera
label
Rara.
that is rah rah. That's like a Lady Gaga thing, right? A label that is trying to expand the repertoire in the middle. We see a lot of recording labels now expanding the repertoire on the early end and on the future end, but only Opera Rara is trying to stretch it out, right?
Get that
At
sausage
home base.
fat in the middle, too.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's go inside the huddle. Joyce El-Khoury singing a little bit of Sombre Forêt from Rossini's William Tell with the Halle conducted by Carlo Rizzi from a brilliant recital album recorded by Opera Rara called Echo. My guest is Joyce El-Khoury. Welcome to Opera Box Score.
Hi, thank you so much.
So I'm so thrilled to meet you. I've been listening to Echo and to prepare for this interview. And just as we were securing you as an interview guest, you were named the Maria Callas debut artist by the Dallas Opera Network, which is, no pressure, just, challenging you to be compared to Maria Callas, an easy thing to fit that.
Sure. Small shoes to fit.
Congratulations on that. That was for your performance of Layla in the Pro Fishers.
Yep.
That was at Dallas Opera, obviously.
Mhm.
So Layla is one of those roles where it's like, who do you cast in this thing? Because that aria, Comme autrefois, feels very like Michaela, in its weight. But then you have like this coloratura moment in the beginning where it feels more like, I don't know, Offenbach or something like that,
Right. It's a surprisingly difficult role for that reason alone, because as you say, this aria that in the first act, which is, other than a couple of lines, this is the first thing she sings, right? And
it's very middle voice, and and the orchestration is pretty rich. So
right. But then there's this, a lot of coloratura, and it's very high, the aria in the first act, and then you have the duet with Zurga, which is kind of like a Tosca Scarpia kind of moment where they're just hurling their voices at each other, and that's quite intense and dramatic. So a lot of requirements to sing that role. I think that people shouldn't take for granted, I don't think.
I'm glad you brought up Tosca, but I want to put a pin in that for 1 second, because last week on our show, we talked about Iphigenie on Tauride. And I just want, as somebody who sings this role, I just wanted to talk with you about it. One, when you first got this assignment, did you know which Iphigenie you were going to be singing because of the 4 different versions that there are, like the in Tauride, and then within each opera, in Aulis and in Taurus, there are like the Vienna version and like the Paris version. So I don't know if it's that much different for the soprano singing Iphigenie, but it just seems like very confusing. It's very confusing for people who are Iphigenie neophytes, what are we actually singing? But you did the in Tauride, which is part 3 of the saga, which is Orestes and his boyfriend Pylade are shipwrecked.
This was a whole new world to me. I never, ever anticipated that I would sing Iphigenie. It wasn't even a role that was in my musical orbit, okay. when I was studying and growing up. So it was brand new to me when they when it was offered to me, and I thought, I don't know, this is not my repertoire. I mean, should I sing this? I'm not sure.
Okay, but
and then I studied.
Do you mean it's not your repertoire because it sort of borders on being early music, or it's too low? Okay.
Yeah. No, too low. No. I choose roles based on how they feel, and how psychologically, and musically and emotionally. It's not about notes. Okay. Never has been. But I grabbed a score and I listened, and I just fell in love. I loved the opera, and I said, yes, I'll do it. And then the more I studied it, the more I loved it. But beyond that, I'm not it was like I dove into a brand new pool of works. It was so fascinating. I loved it. I'd love to do it again.
Well, I have a friend who is a musicologist, a French musicologist, and always maintains that French libretti are more interesting. I don't know if you feel that same way. If especially you're doing a lot of, with opera rare, you're recording like this mid 19th century French repertoire. If you find the words to just be more compelling and the characters to be more compelling.
Oh, that's a hard question, because French is my second language, right? I grew up speaking Arabic, and then I learned French because that's one of the official languages in Lebanon, where I was born. But there's something about the French. It's such a beautiful language. Well, so is Italian. I mean, I can't. No. You can't. No, I can't.
Okay.
It's just every language comes with its own poetry. And as you know, in opera, the plots are often very convoluted and very confusing. Mm-hmm. And if we look at them through our modern minds, they sometimes seem complicated, overly complicated and ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But if you put yourself back into the times that these were written, you can see the importance of the story. You can see the drama that is in the text. You can't look at it through today's lens, but within all that there is poetry, definitely.
Well, just to bring it back to the Maria Callas Debut Artist Award, Iphigenie was a character that Callas, she made a movie out of it, and she also sang, I forget the name of the character in Il Pirata.
Imogen,
yeah. Mm-hmm. And I read in one of your reviews that, these comparisons to Callas were happening before you were named the Maria Callas Debut Artist. So I don't know if that's something you think about the drama and about, I don't want to say sacrificing your voice, but deploying your voice to serve the music, regardless of whatever the need or the instinct to take care of the voice, which is what Callas was sort of known for. I don't know if that's why that award is so tricky to say that about anybody,
Oh.
Welcome to Opera Box Score.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, we're going there. Well, I have been, I have at times used my voice to express certain emotions and I demand color from my voice. And that is absolutely something that I am becoming more and more aware of, the importance of managing that for the sake of vocal health.
And longevity in your career,
Yeah, exactly. So it's really about finding balance whilst maintaining a sense of spontaneity, because when you're on stage, you have to go all the way. I mean, I have to go all the way, and if I
That's why
don't,
the audience came. So, I mean, I'm so excited. I'm so glad you're saying this, because we're going to hear you. We'll talk about why you're in Chicago very soon. But when I go to the theater, yes, if somebody sings beautifully, yes, thank you. I really appreciate that. But when somebody goes authentic, goes for expression, then I feel like, oh, I'm glad I'm here. I'm so happy I made it to this performance. Because you feel something,
That's great to hear coming from you as well, because isn't that why we do it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't that why a performer wants to perform? And isn't that why an audience member comes to the opera? They want to feel something. They want to be transported. They when I think about why I do what I do, yes, I love being on stage. I love communicating. But I think that there's something that happens that is beyond anything we can control. When we are on stage and we are performing and we're expressing the feelings and the psychology of a character who, we assume is we're playing a human being. Sometimes we're not playing a human being, but when we're playing a human being, we're showing a real human condition, real human emotion, conflict, trauma, joy, and I know that an audience member is able, and whether they realize it or not, are identifying with a character or not identifying with the character. And so what ends up happening is the person sitting in the chair in the theater is observing a character having an experience, and they are relating to this character. And I think subliminally or unconsciously, I should say, they are being told that you're not alone in your emotions. You're not alone in your life's challenges, because every human being has experienced a variety of things, so much so that we had to write operas about it. So whatever you're going through, you're not alone. And that's the whole purpose of art in general, I think. And so I think if a singer gets on stage and sings vocally and it's beautiful and it's perfect, well, great. You've done half your job. There's more. Right? And so I think this is why I push myself to almost to a fault. And I need moments where I need to consciously rein it back to preserve vocal quality and longevity, as you said.
Well, that was what brings it back to Maria Callas, because she is at her heart a bel canto singer. She's trained in bel canto, and she did everything through a bel canto technique until she didn't. But I look at your kind of, I don't want to say wild, but and disparate's also not a fair word, but just your diverse repertoire. I mean, you have a Rosina and you have a Salome. You have a Tatiana and you have a Tatiana boxed from the Great Scott.
Oh my, yes.
So
Yes,
we're talking comedy, we're talking psychopaths, we're talking ingenues. And then, now you're in Chicago to sing Amelia, which is, once again, at its heart, a bel canto role, but it's bel canto on steroids.
Absolutely. Yep.
The orchestra is just about as big as anything Verdi ever wrote. I mean, it's like basically Aida, with bel canto lines,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So how are you enjoying that? Oh, and by the way, you're singing it with Riccardo Muti, who, he knows a couple things about Verdi.
Right. No pressure. Okay, well, what would you like me to address?
Well, I just want to say that congratulations on being chosen to sing in what might be Riccardo Muti's last opera with Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Who knows if he does one more in his final year, but it would seem like this is going to be the last one. And I love this opera so much.
I do too.
The melodies are just so gorgeous.
It's perfect.
Yeah. And this aria that you have your entrance aria, man, what a high C. It's a high C, right?
It's a high C. It's a really, really high C. No, it's that aria is really like, it's a mad scene. Really. And so talk about character. This is a woman who is quite isolated, and her life is, everything is shushed and in private, and she has a really intense inner life, it seems, and she's very tormented by her love for Riccardo, so much so that she wants to, she's going against her faith to go see this fortune teller. She's terrified. She is absolutely terrified, and she has no choice but to do this. She's so desperate to remove these feelings from her heart and stay, honorable. And in terms of, the variety of characters that I've played, just to kind of touch on that, my career has kind of things have just kind of happened naturally and automatically. When I first started out as a young singer, I thought that I would be singing Marguerite and Mimi and Liu and Michaela, which I did. I did sing those. But when I started professionally, the industry was inviting me to sing bel canto right out the door. And so it kind of chose that for me. And then I realized, well, this is really fascinating. And especially because I was recording so much bel canto right off the bat. It just ended up...
You became a Donizetti queen yourself.
It just happened, but I didn't think, I couldn't have imagined that. So that just happened. And then Donizetti. So then I ended up really getting to know Donizetti. And now something similar has happened, in that the Verdi that I've sung prior to this I've done, 70-something performances of Traviata, and I've done a few Otello performances with Lauren Mazel. But this is my first, big girl Verdi. And just like with the bel canto, this Maestro Muti invited me to sing this. We did the Verdi Requiem together last year in Palermo, and then he invited me to do this, and I wasn't expecting it. I didn't ever imagine that I would sing ballo, before I sing, Aida, I don't know, Corsaro or something, but here we are, and I feel like I'm in good hands with the maestro, and it's feeling great, because like you say, I'm singing it as a bel canto role, and then I'm infusing it with drama and really getting into my body for those big moments, because it is bel canto on steroids. Absolutely.
But we throw this term around a lot, and I have my own ideas of what bel canto means for a singer like you. And you can disagree with me or not, but I always think it's trying to find the Italian vowel, trying to keep the vibrato speed even, trying to make sure the registration changes aren't so dramatic. And then, if possible, keep the tone beautiful.
You're right.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that, or is there something that you think you disagree with about that?
No, everything you said is absolutely accurate. I would just add that with bel canto, it's very important within the line that nothing ever really sticks out. You know, it's like in a car when you're driving and you need to brake, you don't just go, huh, and then your passenger kind of, how do you say?
Like jolts forward.
Jolts forward, right? You want to brake smoothly, you want to accelerate smoothly so that nothing sticks out from the musical phrase. And I think that's something to really be conscious of when singing bel canto. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And I mean, does Muti, I mean, I kind of know what the answer is already, but does Muti help you with that? I mean, we're talking about the first aria, I forget how it's, Ma dell'Orido or Ecco il Campo.
Ecco l'Orido Campo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's this big moment, at the cadenza, where it sounds like, oh, she's going to have a beautiful, it's going to be a beautiful floated sea, but instead you get the entire orchestra just sawing away on this thing.
It's a big moment.
Does he help you with that? Do you feel like it's increasing in a way that you can sort of ride it, or does it feel like, oh, F me?
No, absolutely. Because, it's this is why Verdi is such a genius, because the whole aria leads up to that moment. She gets madder and madder and madder. And then she just can't take it anymore. She's imploring God that she has to sing a high C, in order to just.
It's like destroying the Horcrux. You
have to. I mean, she has no choice but to sing a high C in the way that she's imploring God to have mercy on her. She is so desperate. So the orchestra just swells in this way that, I mean, and the thing that is so wonderful in working with Maestro is he, as you know, he is known for being precise, for demanding all the musicians to do exactly what Verdi wrote. Verdi wrote. Wow, it just became Italian over here with Verdi wrote. But it's not for the sake of just being correct and accurate. It's not from a point of view that is scientific. This is what he wrote, so we must do. Well, yes, there's an element of that. This is what Verdi wrote. This is what we must do. But there's a reason, and especially in this opera, which is so theatrical. There is not one note out of place. So all the tempi changes, all the little recits, all those moments, they're all written in order to tell the story and for the drama. So when you do exactly what the Verdi wrote, the drama comes to life because he wrote it that way. And so everything, when Maestro is saying do exactly what he wrote, he's right. It brings the drama. It tells the story.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I want to ask you two more questions about the show. What is it like to have a moment like Moro in this opera where it's like, okay, everybody be quiet. Now she's going to sing a song and you're just going to get a cello and she gets to do whatever she wants,
That moment is a gift. I'm not going to lie. It's a singer's dream because time stops, right? And it's so satisfying to sing because it's beautiful, but also because it's the woman at her most, at her lowest and her most vulnerable and her most honest, and so, and Verdi wrote it in that way that it's just naked almost. She's like, oh, I have nothing left to lose. Just let me see my son. And it's such a special, special moment. I have nothing else to say other than that.
I'm usually crying once the cello goes, I'm like, okay.
I know. It's such a privilege. It's such a privilege.
So on the other hand, we talk about this aria as it being a gift for the soprano, but would you say that Tecco Iosto is a punishment for both the tenor and the soprano? I mean that cabaletta sounds so, it just sounds so difficult to me.
It's really, yes, it's difficult. Not gonna lie. Okay,
What was
it
he
is.
thinking? He's supposed to be this guy that's really good at writing for the voice. Who was the original soprano that was able to sing that? I mean,
You know what? I mean, listen. These days, it's you can tacit. You could, we're not doing that. We're doing exactly what's written, as you can. I'm sure, as you can
Smoothie,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's very difficult. But let me tell you this: there's before that ending, the ending of the Cabaletta, there is music from heaven when she tells him she loves him, and it's just. I literally feel like I'm leaving my body in that moment because the music is from God. It was music. It's heavenly. It's not. It's like they both those two characters they're completely transported. In that moment, nothing else exists but their love, and it's. I can't even begin to understand how he conceived of this music. That must have been given to him. It's. I mean, is there more beautiful music than that when two people express their love to each other? I can't think of anything. I think it's incredible.
Well, you could not have scripted a better commercial for this this performance that's coming up with Francesco Melli as your Riccardo.
Yes.
I forget who's the Ulrika. I didn't research this. I'll look it up and we'll give good details.
Oh, okay. Her name is Julia. I can't pronounce her last name.
Okay.
But she is absolutely incredible. I mean, this is a really fantastic, really impressive voice. Really gorgeous.
I found it. It's Julia Machocchina.
Oh my gosh.
And then you have an Italian, Damiana Mizzi as Oscar.
Wonderful Oscar. It's
And
really a great cast.
And Luca
Truly.
Salsi. Oh, wow. As Renato.
Yep.
And performances are, well, by the time you're listening to this, folks, the first performance will have happened. I will be there on the last performance on the 28th, but I'm so looking forward to it. Joyce El-Khoury, congratulations on the Maria Callas Debut Artist Award.
Thank you.
Congratulations on these upcoming performances in advance. And thank you for being a guest on Opera Box Score.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. Thank you.
Oliver, I think my favorite part of that interview was when you asked her about that thing, and she responded so eloquently.
I know.
That really,
she was so. Her answer to
statement.
that question was just.
It's really sitting with me, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It really stays with you. Exactly. Yeah.
One thing I really like is how well this has been edited together so that no one can tell that there's been any time shift whatsoever.
The only time shift is right now. 2-minute drill.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Odessa Opera reopened with a gala performance dedicated to the armed forces of Ukraine. The opening comes as the country announced a ban on the performance of broadcast of music. Announced a ban on the performance or broadcast of music by Russian composers and artists who were Russian citizens anytime after 1991. The musicians who have condemned the Russian invasion are eligible to apply for an exemption.
Following a season of no cancellations due to COVID-19, the Metropolitan Opera has released its final ticket sales numbers. The company sold 61% of available tickets during the 2021-22 season after returning from a 1.5-year absence. However, sales were down from the 75% in the last pre-pandemic season. General Manager Peter Gelb noted, "We consider it to be a triumph in that we started and we ended and we never missed a performance along the way."
The board of the San Antonio Symphony has dissolved the company entirely after a lengthy lockout of its musicians, saying, quote, "By unanimous vote, the board has initiated the requisite steps to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The assets of the symphony now lie in the hands of a trustee who will liquidate them, pay what creditors remain, and close the doors.
The stage managers of Des Moines Metro Opera have unionized and joined the American Guild of Musical Artists. AGMA will now be the exclusive bargaining representative for stage managers at the opera company, but who's going to be the company's exclusive sports drink?
Famed bass baritone Simon Estes will retire from the opera stage following a performance as a part of the Des Moines Metro Opera's production of Porgy and Bess, where he will appear as Lawyer Fraser. This will mark the 103rd of his nearly 60-year career. The opera holds particular importance to Estes as he was a part of a 1985 production at the Met, where he took on the title role of Porgy.
To commemorate the 100th anniversary of the birth of renowned Italian soprano Renata Tebaldi, the Italian Cultural Institute of New York, in collaboration with the Renata Tebaldi Museum and Foundation, will present a special retrospective exhibition. It will showcase portraits, exclusive photographs, and unpublished videos highlighting the soprano's American triumphs from 1955 to 1974.
Musician Amanda Aldridge has been honored by one of the world's most sought-after commemorations, the Google Doodle. The search engine marked the 111th, count it, Tebaldi, 111th anniversary of a celebrated London recital given by the classically trained British soprano and composer. Her father, of course, was the legendary African-American stage actor Ira Aldridge, and her mother was the Swedish opera singer Amanda Brandt.
Joel Thompson has been named composer in residence at Houston Grand Opera, where his previous commission, The Snowy Day, premiered last year. In his new role, Thompson will be in charge of strengthening the organization's relationship with the greater Houston community, lead new education programs and partnerships, and mentor young artists, including composers and librettists.
In trade news, Barry Kosky, the intendant of the Komische Oper Berlin, will step down in July after 10 years at the helm of the company. His final production is called Barry Kosky's All Singing, All Dancing Yiddish Review. Kosky will remain at the house in an advisory capacity.
Seattle Opera has announced that Dennis Robinson Jr. has been appointed as its next director of programs and partnerships. The Carnegie Mellon University alumnus, or Carnegie Mellon University if you're nasty, has served in administrative roles in such companies as Palm Beach Opera and Pittsburgh Ballet Theater.
In not trade news, when Austrian Culture Secretary Andrea Meyer said not long ago she wanted a woman to run the Vienna State Opera, most saw this as a statement of no confidence in the present intendant, Bogdan Rosic, who's in the middle of his first term and up for renewal. The replacement shortlist consisted of 6 women, 5 men, including Rosic, and he kept his job, now remaining in the general director post until 2030.
Exit stage right, Canadian pianist and coach Denise Massé has died at age 76. Massé was inducted into the Canadian Opera Hall of Fame in 2013 after a long career as a member of the music staffs of l'Opéra de Montréal, the Metropolitan Opera, and the Juilliard School, as well as working at many more of the world's leading musical institutions.
And on this day, June 20th, in 1819, it was the birth of the Rhenish Jewish conductor, cellist, and composer Jacques Offenbach. In 1832, it was the first performance of Fromental Alevi's La Tentation in Paris, with the composer conducting. In 1843, Fyodor Stravinsky, the father of Igor Stravinsky, who was also a bass, was born in Novy Dvor near Rechica, Russian of Polish descent. In 1891, Italian mezzo-soprano Giannina Arangi Lombardi was born. She is the teacher of Leila Genscher and Maria Stader I Stan. In 1894, Jules Massenet's La Navarresse premiered in London with Emma Calvé in the title role. In 1924, Italian conductor Silvio Varviso was born in Italy because he was Italian. In 1937, English bass Stafford Dean was born in Kingswood, Surrey. In 1947, it's Albert Herring Day, the first performance of Benjamin Britten's opera at Glyndebourne. And one for Weston, in 1969, it was the first performance of Penderecki's The Devils of Loudun in Hamburg at the Staatsoper.
That is your 2-minute drill.
La troisième, la troisième, la troisième ne dit rien. Il a pris tout de même, quelques vous m'entendez bien, et voilà que cette pièce pour un joli garçon, et voilà que cette pièce
just a little bit of Offenbach for you. That was Juan Diego Flores singing the couplet from La Belle Hélène o Montida with the Teatro Comunale di Bologna Orchestra led by Roberto Abbado.
It's the training wheels version of A Mes Amis because it's a step lower, but you still got those octave leaps.
Yeah.
La Belle Hélène, that's a great opera, actually. It's not done so often.
I love any story
really
about Paris and the choice of Paris.
Because he's just so stupid. And
it's just such a great story, yeah. And like all the different goddesses who are like, whatever, think he's hot, but he's really dumb.
The original himbo. Archetypal himbo.
All right, Weston, you're going to be the guy to explain the Google Doodle and Amanda Aldridge.
Yeah, Amanda Aldridge was really interesting. I don't know what hole in knowledge that I had, because usually when an opera figure pops up in the Google Doodle, I'm like, ooh, I know who that is. I'm excited. Amanda Aldridge, I did not know, and I did a little bit of searching, and she's really fascinating. She was a black singer, composer. She composed mostly. She started off as an opera singer, but then she had an incident where she blew out her voice when she had like laryngitis or something, and so her singing career ended kind of early. But she ended up composing a lot of more popular music, a couple of suites and light music under the pseudonym Montague Ring, which is an interesting pseudonym. But I think what's really cool about her is her influence on future generations of black singers. She had a few notable students that included people like Marian Anderson, Whomst, Lawrence Benjamin Brown, Roland Hayes, Paul Robeson, even, who is she was so fascinating and a really sort of influential figure in the black cultural life of the time. She was born in 1866 and lived until March of 1956, and had just this huge career and this huge influence that we don't talk about because, obviously, sometimes the accomplishments of black people in classical music get buried. And I just thought it was great that she was being highlighted during the week leading up to Juneteenth.
I mean, I actually, this is with all sincerity, the only thing that is a bigger honor than like being, or a bigger way of getting your name out there for like the whole world to see than being on the Google Doodle is being interviewed on OBS. So I mean, like if she was around to be on our glamorous Dallas Opera Network interview videos,
get your Ouija boards ready, gentlemen.
So Amanda Aldridge is awesome. San Antonio Symphony is less awesome.
Okay, it's not the symphony that is necessarily less awesome, but the board and the governing body, there is some stuff here that does not fully add up to me.
I'm very slow of study, so make this as simple as you can, Matt.
Okay, so the symphony has the board of the symphony has voted unanimously to disband. They've been in the orchestra has been on strike for a couple of months. They've been locked out essentially. They can't seem to come to agreement. The story from the Times paints that in very neutral terms, but based on some statements from one of the leaders of the union, Mary Ellen Gorey, who's the union chair and a principal second violin in the symphony, like it just does not add up. So it really seems like this is yet another case of like a really badly mismanaged organization from a board that doesn't really care about the art or about the artists. There was a local reporter who wrote up like kind of a postmortem and was talking about how they used to rely on 11th hour donations all the time to get their budget balanced instead of ever setting up some kind of endowment or any sort of independent finances to make it stay solvent and be able to plan. The board is making all these claims about how the requested budget of like $8 to $10 million that the musicians are putting out there, which is in line with what they've had for the last 10 years, is unfeasible because San Antonio is quote unquote a low income city. But if you look at similar sized metros that have similar median incomes, most of the budgets of their orchestras are like 2 to 5 times what San Antonio is requesting. And even if you take out the 5 times, which is Cincinnati, Cincinnati is, I mean, that's a very historic orchestra. That's a town with a lot of musical tradition. You can make an argument that they are not a peer of San Antonio, even though numerically they look that way. Let's take them out. You're still left with cities like Salt Lake City, Nashville, Kansas City, St. Louis, similar sized cities, similar median income. Those budgets are all in the $18 to $30 million ranges, and they have lower or similar growth rates over the last, relevant period of years. Also, if you believe the musicians, which given the information that has become available so far, I am inclined to do.
You're going to say something about the pandemic, aren't you?
So we talked about this at the time. When all of these negotiations were going on during the pandemic and people were asking for temporary cuts that were needed to stay afloat, it looks like the board was indeed taking advantage of those necessary quote-unquote necessary measures at the time, and are blaming the pandemic to try to enact the same kinds of budget cuts that they tried to get through in the 2017 union or negotiations. Like, they're almost exactly the same terms. And previous comments from other board members have led some of the musicians union to believe that donors are pulling the strings behind the scenes to try to strong arm them into a smaller orchestra, lower budget. And it's really interesting that none of this goes remarked on in the Times piece.
It's very strange.
They're actually usually pretty good about union negotiation stories, about telling both sides of the story here, but it just does not add up here. And I don't want to get all tinfoil hatty, just point at them and call them a neoliberal shills, but this is not, it doesn't seem to be a full picture of the story here. And all of this seems to be very much I think you should leave hot dog guy. We're all trying to find the guy who did this of the board. Yeah. And their statements shouldn't be taken seriously if that is the case.
Yeah, it's a really, obviously you always hate to see a symphony or any music organization go under, but it does seem to have been pretty preventable based on what we're seeing and comparing it to other places in similar situations. We've talked about before, like Matt said, about how the pandemic has been leveraged against these places. I would also like to put forward that, there is a big problem, particularly in the U.S., not just for symphonies. Obviously, this is not an opera company, but we felt it was significant enough to include in the 2-minute drill because it has a lot of the same issues. You have a lot of problems where you have a lot of trustees and donors who don't really care that much about the music.
Yeah, they're there for the hobnobbing.
Yeah, exactly. There was a certain symphony orchestra near where I used to live. We'll say that very famously had, I believe, is the president of the board of trustees or whatever his title was, who famously bragged that he had never been to a single concert, and spent very lavishly so that they could have these really fancy downtown offices. And once some shit hit the fan, they were put off to the side. They almost went bankrupt. They had to downsize. They're still in this little shitty building in a bad part of town because of this one guy back 15 years ago now. And this is a constant problem we have when we depend on funding from these private individuals who don't necessarily care, who don't care about the art or the money or paying people.
Well, look, being on the board of a symphony or an opera company, it's not like you're trading pork bellies and wheat futures. These are human beings making art. Mm-hmm. It requires a very different set of hands and a very different way of working. And clearly this board didn't get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And also just so irresponsible to depend on last minute donations and not set up any kind of endowment. That's nonprofit 101.
Yikes. There was no good segue after that story.
Yeah, just kind of sad. I hope that something happens that turns it around for San Antonio. I hope we don't see
Angels
repeats of
investors
this.
in Southern Texas. You know where to put your money.
This is definitely one of those times where I've been thinking about this story all week too, because of all the warning signs, certain economists saying that a recession might be again on the horizon. Which, to which us millennials are like, oh, again. But it really is something that tends to kill a lot of arts organizations that aren't prepared, that have boards that don't care. And this now is the time to prevent that from happening, to, batten down the hatches and really invest in not just the monetary aspect of it, but invest in the art and the people.
Okay, well, here's the segue of the good news corner in terms of the future. It's got to be Barry Kosky. He's done 10 years at the Commercial Opera, and he has not single-handedly. There's a lot of people under him, but
he has two hands.
He's the intendant. Basically, like, operetta is back. And it's back in Berlin, and it's exciting.
True.
And when you look at the Staatsoper and the Deutsche Oper, like, there's no comparison in terms of the excitement that the Komische Oper is creating versus those other two institutions. Like, the repertoire is unusual, it's unique, and it's done typically brilliantly and in a very, very memorable way. I mean, come on. Last production, Barry Kosky's all singing, all dancing Yiddish review.
I love that.
I sort of love the name of that, actually. So
the man has guts. The man has absolute guts. And look, if the purpose of art is to entertain, give that man, 4 more years. I guess I'll be there in advisory capacity.
Yeah, he's
what about
consulting now.
Can you explain this whole thing about
Less
Rosic,
stress, just as much prestige.
Bogdan Rosic? I was so confused when you were talking about that.
Yeah, I said so.
Unpack
Bogdan Rosic replaced not Dominique Meyer at the I think it was Dominique Meyer at the Vienna State Opera. Against the will of the Austrian culture secretary, who she wanted to have a woman. That didn't happen. Rosic's his contract is up. It's time to renew. They get together the short list of men and women, and Rosic keeps his job and is now going to be at the Staatsoper until 2030. So against the wishes of the culture secretary, in the face of all these other applicants, here's the thing, right? Is like, the Vienna State Opera will print money because it's the Vienna State Opera. It's nothing to do with the intendant, right?
Yeah, that's true.
When you run the Vienna State Opera, you don't sign the front of checks. You just sign the back of checks, because that's the money.
They will never, ever, ever, ever let that cash cow.
It won't.
Yeah, culture cow.
Yeah, I was wondering, he's going to remain his post until 2030. That's such a long post at the job, especially when
that's like 2 presidential election cycles.
He's the president of opera.
People.
He is the president of opera.
But is he trying to trump his job and like make it like, a third term, or like Putin, like, I can now be president for another 10 years,
I don't know.
Has there been a coup at the Vienna State Opera is what we're asking.
That's what I would like to see. I would like to see the coup there.
That's going to be quoted out of context.
Congrats to Des Moines Opera for scoring the last performance by Simon Estes. That is...
yeah.
They lucked out on that
what a
one.
Career.
The end of an era.
Career. Yeah.
Joining AGMA is less sexy than having Simon Estes' last performance, but it is a real step. I'm not going to say that's them putting on their big boy pants, because they're a very notable, respectable summer opera company. They don't need me to pat them on the back, but it's really great for those artists to be guaranteed a certain amount of career protection, financial stability. Before we wrap it up, I guys, I know you talked about this, a couple episodes ago. We've got the final numbers in now from the Met. Company selling just over 60% of its available tickets during the 21-22 season. If you were selling a Major League Baseball stadium at 60%, you would be called like the San Diego Padres. Like, that's laughable, right? This would be the Cleveland Guardians, at 60%.
Oh, you're just coming for him right now, huh?
Put him on blast.
I don't understand how Peter Gelb can look the press in the eye and say that we consider it to be a triumph. He says, quote, "We consider it to be a triumph, and that we started and we ended and we never missed a performance along the way."
Well, I think it's about like the psychological impact, because when it comes right down to it, the Met is the most visible opera institution in the United States. So the sort of symbolic value of putting on every single show, even if it wasn't very well attended, I think is, at least in Peter Gelb's eyes, if not everyone's eyes, I think a more important goal than having half of those shows and having them be more full. That being said, you do need to have some sort of fiscal balance so you don't wind up like a certain San Antonio symphony.
Yeah. I mean, you need to watch out for happy talk from management in any kind of statement like this, but like
Absolutely.
it is a good point that tourism is not back to where it was, especially international tourism, because, you know, there is still a pandemic.
And especially considering how bad, you know, the Omicron surge and things like this that happened during the season. Of course, it was going to be lower, and we knew this was coming, but yeah, exactly.
Well, and then actually, I think that part of this quote was left out, right? Because what he said was that we never missed a performance along the way. What a pity that no one saw any of those performances. Let's wrap the show up.
Good call. Bad call. On Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. Time to wrap the show up, as always. Starting off with Oliver Camacho.
So, friend of the show, Kareem Suleiman, was profiled on NPR. Yet another honor, not quite the same honor as being on OBS or being the Google Doodle, but to have your concept become a story on, what was it, All Things Considered or Morning Edition or Weekend Edition? One of the shows.
One of the editions.
Exactly. And, you know, we know that Kareem is very social justice forward in everything that he does. So check out this piece. We'll have a link to our website. The name of the piece is An Arab American Singer Reframes Music About the Crusades. And that's, of course, about his Spoleto show, which just closed, the Unholy Wars, I think it was called.
Yeah, I believe so.
Matt Cummings.
Okay, so I did need a little bit of a break from opera news after researching everything that was going on in San Antonio. And my Twitter feed has been full of everyone posting these doll-y memes, which is the AI-generated like art creator, where you basically give it a prompt and it creates very like complete-looking images. And apparently someone posted this thread about searching a made-up word, Krungus, into DALL-E, and all of the pictures were of this same monster. And I was just scrolling through this, like, absolutely crying. I can't wait to see who's going to make the first DALL-E opera. We're going to show this in our show notes as well, because you have to see it. It needs to be seen to be believed.
Is it DALL-E as in like Salvador Dali?
I think so, with a Wall-E pun in there as well.
God, I'm just so...
Because it's a robot.
Boring. Weston Williams.
Well, my favorite Dolly from this past week was someone input the phrase Johann Sebastian Bach trail cam footage, and that was definitely nightmare fuel. But I have a sort of a combination good call, bad call. Our friends of the show at Haymarket Opera here in Chicago, they were putting on Joseph Boulon's Anonymous Lover. And I was like, I think I'm going to go, but I put it off a little bit too long. And wouldn't you know, they sold out before I could get a ticket.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I should have mentioned it. That theater has 162 seats in it.
Yes,
I think
yes.
I could fit more people in my bathroom than that theater holds.
And you have.
I have more French roommates than that theater can hold. But it was charming. The show was absolutely charming, and it will be broadcast on a certain radio station in Chicago, so you'll be able to hear it at the very least.
Excellent. I'm glad. That's a good call then for me, since I'll be able to hear it.
Tampa Bay Lightning up 6-2 over the Avs. Maybe I'm gonna predict this series right. I got a good feeling about this game. Of course,
don't jinx it, George.
Super excited to go to the UK and to share some British content with everybody on the show. Of course, I got a Glyndebourne ticket, getting my tickets for Covent Garden as well. Going to snag some interviews. Oh, I'll be drinking my pints, boys. Don't you worry. That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Our announcer, he's Norm Waddell, normwaddell.com. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, get the full show, Stitcher, Spotify, click follow. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, just hit the plus sign. Send us a voice memo or even email us your hot takes. operaboxscore at gmail.com. You're going to get that OBS beer coaster and an OBS lapel pin just for sharing your own hot take, just like Anthony from the Bronx. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio editor is Weston Williams. For our guest, Joyce El-Khoury, and your co-host, Matt Cummings, I'm George Cedarquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you click on the Google Doodle and go down the Amanda Aldridge rabbit hole. We're back with an all-new show next week. We celebrate America and the best American singers. America. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more singing and dancing in Yiddish. Join us.